Hello, hello, Jennifer here from J Forest English Training, and I have a very fun lesson for you. We are going to review Taylor Swift's hit song, Anti-Hero, and we're going to review the lyrics of this song so you can learn a lot of advanced vocabulary and grammar and sentence structure and pronunciation in a really fun way. Are you excited? Let's get started. Let's start by reviewing the name of the song, which is Anti-Hero. Anti-Hero. An anti-hero is someone who does not have traditional heroic qualities. So notice here, heroic, this is an adjective to describe the qualities. You can also describe a person as heroic. So you could say firefighters, people who fight fires, firefighters are very heroic. So we're using it as an adjective. So anti-hero is someone who does not have these traditional heroic qualities like courage. But even though they don't have those qualities, they're still admired. Now, you probably hear about anti-heroes more in movies, plays, books, in this case, song lyrics. Thinking of movies, the first movie that came to my mind is the movie Deadpool. If you haven't seen the movie Deadpool, I highly recommend it because it's hilarious. And this character is a classic example of an anti-hero. So now let's continue on with the rest of the lyrics. Now remember, this is a song, so it's not going to sound the same just reading it, but I am not going to sing this for you. But I have selected some of the most common expressions and idioms that I think you might not know and will be useful for you to have in your vocabulary. So we're just going to focus on these specific expressions that I've highlighted. And after I explain everything, I've included the link to where you can listen to the song, but with the lyrics as well. So you can follow along with the lyrics. So you can click this link after you've watched the lesson. Okay, so this line is, when my depression works the graveyard shift. So here, what I have highlighted to work the graveyard shift, this is actually a time period. And it's a time period at work that begins late at night, so usually around midnight, and ends early in the morning. So you might work from 12 o'clock midnight to 6 a.m. And there are many people who would have to work the graveyard shift, such as doctors, nurses, police, and firefighters, my earlier example, and of course, many others as well. What about you? Have you ever worked the graveyard shift? Share in the comments below. As an example sentence, you could say, I'm exhausted from working the graveyard shift all week. So that's what it means. Now, she's saying my depression. So she's saying her depression starts affecting her around midnight and it lasts all night into the morning. So that's a very negative thing because obviously you're not going to sleep very well if your depression works the grave night shift, right? So let's go to our next sentence. She says, all of the people I've ghosted stand there in the room. Now, I just want to point out, as we're going through this song, just remember this is a song. Taylor Swift wrote it, and the song is kind of like a dream she had. The lyrics don't really make a lot of sense in terms of telling a story. It's like if you tried to tell someone about your dream and it probably wouldn't make a lot of sense. So just keep that in mind as we're reviewing the lyrics. All of the people I've ghosted. Have you heard this expression?
to ghost someone. I've been ghosted. I ghosted him. I ghosted her. This is a new expression that has only been used probably for the last 5 to 10 years. When you ghost someone, you suddenly disappear from that person's life, but you don't tell the person that you're ending the relationship. And the relationship could be a romantic relationship, but it could also be a friendship as well. So let's say you started a new friendship with someone and you hung out 3 or 4 times, you went to the movies, you got coffee, you went out for dinner together, and then all of a sudden, that person doesn't talk to you anymore. You send them a message, hey, do you want to get together this weekend? No reply. You send them another message, hey, did you get my last message? No reply. That person just ghosted you. So I wrote the definition here for you, and let me give you another example sentence. We went out on 3 dates, but then she ghosted me. She just stopped replying to my messages, stopped sending me messages, and she didn't tell me or explain why. The next sentence is, I should not be left to my own devices. This is an idiom, to leave someone to their own devices. Notice the plural. It's devices, plural, devices. And this is to allow someone to make their own decisions about what to do. So by saying I should not be left to my own devices, Taylor Swift is saying that she should not be allowed to make her own decisions about what to do. Here's another example sentence. My boss never leaves me to my own devices. So my boss doesn't allow me to make my own decisions. Of course, in this context, it's about a workplace decisions, right? So it's a very common expression, more so used in a business context. But as you can see with Taylor Swift, you can use it in a general context as well. Let's continue on with our lyrics. They come with prices and vices. Well, that rhymes. Prices, vices. What does vice mean? Well, a vice is a noun and it simply means a bad habit. So remember her line before is that she shouldn't be left to her own devices. She shouldn't be able to make her own decisions. If she does, well, then she has a lot of bad habits that will influence her decisions. So that could be a reason why she shouldn't be left to her own devices. Now, we use this quite a lot with bad habits that aren't that bad of habits, like chocolate. A lot of people will say chocolate is my main vice in life, which is saying, you know, you shouldn't eat so much chocolate, but you do anyway. It's a bad habit of yours. So you can use this with more serious vices like drugs and alcohol, but we also use it with more light vices like chocolate or McDonald's or things like that. Maybe listening to too much Taylor Swift is your vice because you should be working and not listening to Taylor Swift. Okay, let's continue on. So remember, we're skipping quite a lot because we're just focusing on specific words that I don't think you'll understand. Because you got tired of my scheming. Now, what does it mean to scheme? When you scheme, it's when you make plans, but those plans are secret. And the purpose of those plans is to deceive others. Deceive simply means you want them to believe or do something that isn't true or isn't good for them. So it's a negative thing to scheme. To scheme. How can we trick someone? How can we do something that will benefit us but not them? Here's an example for you. My kids have been scheming to avoid chores. So imagine your kids are like, how can we tell mom that we don't need to clean the bathroom? Or how can we get dad to do the dishes for us? That's scheming. And then they talk back and forth to each other. We can tell them we have homework to do, but then they don't actually have homework. It's just the scheme, right? So, of course, this is more of a lighthearted example, but it can be used in a more negative way as well. You can scheme to try to cheat or steal, for example. So, because you got tired of my scheming. So, someone, whoever the you is, was tired of Taylor Swift always creating these plans to deceive that person, scheming. And it makes sense that the person would get tired of it, not want her to do that. Okay, then the chorus. The chorus is pretty simple. There's just one word that I'll point out. I'll stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. So to stare, this is the same as look. So right now I'm looking here, but notice when I look, sometimes my eyes will move a little bit or I'll blink my eyes. But when you stare, it's really intense, and I look directly at you and I don't blink. I'm just staring. So it can be very intimidating when you stare at someone, and it's considered rude or impolite in North American culture, at least, to stare. But in this example, staring directly at the sun, which is actually something you should not do because it can hurt your eyes. You shouldn't stare at the sun. So let me leave that as your example sentence. You shouldn't stare at the sun because you could hurt your eyes. So don't take that advice from Taylor Swift. But she never stares in the mirror. So she doesn't look at herself for a long period of time intensely in the mirror. So I left the definition of stare for you as well. Now let's continue on. It must be exhausting always rooting for the anti-hero. You know what anti-hero is. So let's talk about the verb to root. And notice you root for someone, or you can root for something as well. Here's the definition. When you root for someone, you want that person or team to win or to achieve something specific in the sense of a promotion or a job. They win that promotion, they win that job. So you can think of it really as winning. We do use this a lot in sports. So let's say it was the World Cup and we had France and Argentina in the playoffs, right? So you would ask someone, who are you rooting for? Who are you rooting for? Which team are you rooting for? You're asking them, who do you want to win? Are you rooting for France or are you rooting for Argentina? Why are you rooting for France? And then you can explain why. Now, let's say there's two people up for a job promotion, Fred and Nancy. Are you rooting for Fred or are you rooting for Nancy? Or it could be in a political context. You have two candidates. Are you rooting for candidate X or candidate Y? So let me just leave that example sentence with sports because that is probably the most common time you'll use it. Are you rooting for France or Argentina? And then whoever you're rooting for is the person or team you want to win. Okay. It must be exhausting always rooting for the anti-hero. So you want the anti-hero to win. Remember, I highly recommend you listen to the song with the lyrics, and then you can see all this new vocabulary and you can listen to the song. Did you know that this is the most popular song according to the charts right now at the time of this recording. That's why I chose it. Okay. And remember I said it seems like the lyrics don't really make a lot of sense. They don't tell a story. It's more like she's talking about her dream. Sometimes I feel like everybody is a sexy baby. Like that's something you might have dreamt about last night, right? So that's why I'm not going through it word for word and I'm focusing on specific words. Did you hear my covert narcissism I disguise as altruism? I'll explain some other words here because you might be wondering about covert. Covert simply means secret or hidden. This is used a lot in a military context. They're on a covert mission. So it's a mission that's secret. The general public has no knowledge of it. They're on a covert mission. They're working on a covert project, for example. So it's used more in military, but it could also be used at work. You could be working on a covert project within your company. Now let's talk about narcissism and altruism. Narcissism is having too much self-interest, interest in your own appearance, or it could also be your abilities as well. And covert narcissism is I'm trying to hide it. I'm trying to keep this interest in myself secret or hidden from others. Altruism, on the other hand, is more of the opposite of narcissism because altruistic people are more concerned about others, not themselves. And it's that willingness to do things for others, even if it means sacrificing your own needs. That's altruism. Now let's talk about disguise. When you disguise something, you try to hide it. And in this case, it's a feeling or an emotion. But we also you can try to disguise yourself. I could try to disguise myself by wearing a black wig. So I could have black hair instead of my normal hair. I could wear glasses and I could wear different clothing so I don't look like myself. Nobody would recognize me if they saw me on the street, for example. So you can disguise yourself. But in this case, she's talking about disguising an emotion. So trying to hide that emotion with another emotion. So she's trying to hide her narcissism, which is interest in herself, her secret narcissism, as altruism, interest in other people. So that's a very interesting lyric, to be honest. It's very well written. Let's continue on. Okay, our chorus again. So remember, we saw stare and rooting, and we already discussed that. Now let's take a look at daughter-in-law. Again, this is what caused me to say this is more like her talking about her dream. Because when I first saw this, I was really confused because Taylor Swift cannot have a daughter-in-law. She's too young to have a daughter-in-law because a daughter-in-law is the woman who is married to your son or daughter. So if Taylor Swift had a daughter-in-law, Taylor Swift would have to have a child, a son or a daughter, but that child would have to be old enough to be married. And then the person her child marries is either her daughter-in-law for a woman or son-in-law for a man. Now, obviously, that's not possible. But if you're in your mid to late 40s or 50s, 60s, then you could definitely have a daughter-in-law. But you possibly have a mother-in-law. A mother-in-law is the mother of your husband or wife. So in the song, she says, I have this dream. My daughter-in-law kills me for the money. She thinks I left them in the will. Okay, that sounds like a common dream that one could have. Now, the will, A will is a legal document and it outlines how your assets, now your assets could be your money, your house, your car, or any other possessions, will be distributed, which means given to other people after you die. Now, I wonder what this is in your native language. Do you use the terminology will just translated in your native language? I wonder. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious about that. Okay, she, the daughter-in-law, thinks I left them in the will. That's funny. All right. So it's the chorus again. And oh, that's it. So now I want you to click this link, which you can find in the description of this video. Click this link and watch the song with the lyrics. And I hope you enjoy it. And did you enjoy this lesson? This is the first lesson I've ever done reviewing a song and the lyrics of a song. So did you like this? Would you like me to review more song lyrics? Let me know in the comments below.
I am really excited to hear about what you thought about this lesson, and if you didn't like it, please be honest, because this is the first time I've reviewed song lyrics and I need to know if you want me to do more videos like this. So please be honest. If you didn't like this style of lesson, that's okay. I am totally fine with that. Just be honest and share your feedback in the comments below. But if you did like this lesson, then please let me know by hitting that like button, subscribing, and leave a positive comment as well. And of course, share this video with your friends. And before you go, make sure you head on over to my website, jforrestenglish.com, and download your free speaking guide. In this guide, I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. And until next time, happy studying.